5 years have passed since Anakin Skywalker chose trust over secrecy, helping the Jedi arrest Darth Sidious and prevent Order 66. The Republic celebrates peace while Luke and Leia grow up openly as Skywalker children. But beneath the Jedi Temple, Sidious waits in his cell, his influence spreading like poison through the Force. This is the story of how even the right choices can't always prevent tragedy, and how the Chosen One's destiny demanded one final sacrifice. The fireworks over Coruscant painted the night sky in brilliant cascades of color. 5 years of relative peace had transformed the capital world into a beacon of hope, its trillion citizens celebrating another anniversary of the Republic's salvation. In the streets below, children played with toy lightsabers, pretending to be Anakin Skywalker and Mace Windu defeating the evil Sith Lord. They didn't know that deep beneath the Jedi Temple, in a cell lined with cortices and void of any connection to the Force, that same Sith Lord sat in meditation, his yellow eyes burning with patient hatred. Anakin stood on the temple's observation deck, watching the celebrations with an unease that had grown stronger each passing year. Luke and Leia, now 5 years old, practiced lightsaber forms in the training hall behind him, their laughter echoing through the ancient stones. They were powerful, perhaps more powerful than he had been at their age, and they were loved, trained openly by both parents and the reformed Jedi Order. Everything seemed perfect, too perfect. You feel it too, don't you? The darkness, it's like a whisper at the edge of hearing. Sidious may be imprisoned, but the dark side itself cannot be caged. It finds other vessels, other voices. The reformed Jedi Order had changed much in 5 years. Attachment was no longer forbidden, but carefully guided. Families visited the temple freely. Padawans chose their own paths after training. Yet for all their reforms, something felt wrong. Reports trickled in from the Outer Rim. Mysterious disappearances, former separatist worlds experiencing unrest, clone troopers going missing from their posts. The Senate's voting tomorrow on Sidious's final sentencing. Some want execution, others life imprisonment. A few want him released, claiming the trial was a Jedi conspiracy. Released? After everything he's done? His influence runs deeper than we thought. Even locked away, he has believers. Senators who whisper that the Jedi staged the whole confrontation to seize power. As if summoned by the mention of his name, a cold wind swept across the observation deck. Impossible at this altitude, behind the temple's shields. In the training hall, Luke's lightsaber flickered and died. Leia's practice remote suddenly turned aggressive, its stun bolts increasing to dangerous levels before Anakin destroyed it with a gesture. The peace they'd fought for was fracturing, and somewhere in the depths below, Darth Sidious smiled. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this content so far, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed. We thank you all for your continued support. The Senate chamber had never been so divided. 5 years after his arrest, Darth Sidious, former Chancellor Palpatine, finally stood trial for his crimes. The evidence was overwhelming. Testimonies from Mas Amedda, recordings of his Sith transformation, the prevented Order 66 discovered in the Clone Army's programming. Yet as Sidious stood in the defendant's pod, bound by force-suppressing shackles, he seemed almost amused. The defendant orchestrated a galactic war that claimed millions of lives, all to seize absolute power. The evidence is irrefutable. Evidence? You mean the word of Jedi who attacked me in my own office? Who claim I'm some ancient evil while they wield mystical powers beyond your comprehension? Tell me, senators, who truly threatens democracy? An elderly politician or an order of warrior monks with mind control abilities? Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Even chained, even cut off from the Force by voidstone restraints, Sidious's words carried power. He had spent decades building relationships, favors, and dependencies. Some senators genuinely believed the Jedi had fabricated everything to prevent Palpatine from limiting their power. More importantly, his followers outside the prison had spent 5 years planting seeds of doubt, distributing coded messages that appeared to be philosophical texts but actually contained instructions for those still loyal to him. The Chancellor, former Chancellor, did lead us through the war successfully. Perhaps his methods were extreme, but were they criminal? Or simply decisive leadership the Jedi didn't approve of? He murdered 3 Jedi Masters. He shot lightning from his fingers. He confessed to creating the entire war. I defended myself against an illegal arrest. As for those supernatural claims, where's your proof beyond Jedi testimony? You ask the galaxy to condemn me based on religious superstition. The trial continued for hours, Sidious weaving doubt with every word. Even when confronted with the Clone Army's Order 66 programming, he claimed it was a reasonable contingency against a Jedi coup, one that nearly happened from a certain point of view. By the session's end, the Senate was split 3 ways. Those demanding execution, those supporting life imprisonment, and a growing minority calling for his release. That night, 3 senators who had spoken against Sidious died in their sleep. No wounds, no poison, their hearts simply stopped. The medical droids found no explanation, but every Jedi in the temple felt the dark side's touch, like ice-cold fingers trailing across their souls. The council chamber crackled with tension. What had once been a circle of unified wisdom had become a battleground of philosophy. The near catastrophe with Sidious had shattered their certainty, and 5 years of reform had only deepened the divisions. Evolved we have, families we allow, attachment we guide, yet stronger the dark side grows. Wrong, perhaps, our path is. Wrong. Our compassion nearly destroyed us. Skywalker's attachment made him vulnerable to Sidious. We reformed too much, too quickly. We need strength, vigilance, not more weakness. Anakin's attachment also saved us. His trust in the Council, his love for his family, these gave him strength to resist Sidious. We're arguing about the past while the present burns. Sidious influences the Senate from his cell. Former separatist systems are mobilizing. The crime syndicates are organizing. We need to act, not debate philosophy. The younger Jedi, those who had come of age during the reforms, sided with different factions. Some wanted to return to the old ways, believing tradition meant safety. Others pushed for more radical changes, arguing the Order should fully integrate with Republic society. A few suggested darker measures, that Sidious should be executed without trial, that the Jedi should take temporary control to ensure stability. Intelligence reports surviving separatist leaders massing on Mustafar. Someone is coordinating them, feeding them resources. Then I'll go. End this before it starts. With your family remain you should. Trust others we must. But Anakin's visions had returned, not of Padme dying, but of the galaxy burning, his children standing in the ashes of the temple. Every night the same dream, Sidious free, the Jedi scattered, and Luke facing a choice between the dark side and death. He couldn't ignore it, couldn't sit idle while threats gathered. Master, with respect, waiting is what nearly cost us everything before. I'm going to Mustafar. The council erupted in debate, but Anakin had already turned to leave. Behind him, Yoda's ears drooped with ancient sadness, sensing the will of the Force moving toward an ending none of them could prevent. Mustafar hadn't changed, still a world of fire and shadow, its mining facilities clinging to islands of black rock amid endless lava flows. Anakin's starfighter descended through clouds of volcanic ash, every instinct screaming danger. He should have brought backup, should have listened to the council, but the Force had drawn him here with an urgency that brooked no delay. The Separatist leadership had indeed gathered. Newt Gunray, Wat Tambor, San Hill, the architects of countless atrocities, now reduced to desperate fugitives. They had been promised amnesty by someone claiming to represent a new government, a post-Republic authority that would pardon their crimes in exchange for their vast hidden resources. It was a lie, of course, a trap orchestrated by Sidious's followers to create an incident. Skywalker, we surrender. We have information about Sidious's followers, about their plans. Then you'll return to Coruscant to testify. Justice, not vengeance. It was a crucial moment. Anakin choosing mercy over wrath, proving he was not the monster Sidious had tried to create. He began securing the prisoners, contacting the council to report his success. The war's last remnants would finally face trial. The blaster bolt came from nowhere, a cloaked figure emerging from the shadows, a Sidious loyalist who had infiltrated the facility. Anakin's danger sense flared, his lightsaber igniting just in time to deflect the shot meant for his head. But the second assassin was already moving, a vibroblade seeking his back. The fight was brutal and quick. Anakin survived, but barely. A deep gash across his ribs, burns from a thermal detonator that nearly claimed his leg. The Separatist leaders died in the crossfire, silenced forever by those who feared their testimony. As medical droids worked to stabilize him, Anakin realized the truth. Sidious's reach extended far beyond his cell. The war wasn't over. It had just gone underground. The aftermath on Mustafar revealed the scope of the conspiracy. The facilities were riddled with evidence. Communications to dozens of systems, weapons shipments to unknown locations, and most disturbing, medical equipment designed for Force user imprisonment. Someone was preparing for war against the Jedi. This wasn't a gathering of defeated leaders. It was a trap, for me, for any Jedi who came. They wanted us to find this, to draw us out, to make us look like aggressors again. The HoloNet was already spinning the story. Jedi Knight attacks diplomatic meeting, slaughters former government officials seeking peaceful resolution. It didn't matter that the evidence showed otherwise. Public opinion was a weapon, and Sidious's followers wielded it expertly. In his cell, Sidious received the news through the Force. Not through words, but through the darkness itself, which carried whispers of pain and fear like a symphony to his senses. The medical equipment on Mustafar had served its purpose, not to imprison Force users, but to channel his influence despite the void stone of his cell. Each piece of suffering, each moment of doubt, fed his power. Such tragedy. Poor Skywalker, always rushing into danger. One wonders if his famous luck will hold forever. That night, Padme felt it first, a coldness in her chest, like fingers of ice wrapping around her heart. She collapsed during a Senate session, medical droids swarming as her vital signs fluctuated wildly. No cause, no explanation, just a gradual weakening that medical science couldn't explain. Anakin, still recovering from Mustafar, felt her pain through their bond and knew with terrible certainty his nightmares were coming true, just 5 years delayed. The temple's maximum security wing had become a focal point of dark energy. The void stone walls prevented Sidious from directly using the Force, but they couldn't stop the psychological damage of prolonged exposure to his presence. His very existence was like a wound in the Force, and even contained, that wound festered. More disturbing still, the medical equipment from Mustafar had contained focusing crystals, not to imprison Force users as the Jedi believed, but to create tiny gaps in the Void Stone's coverage, microscopic channels through which Sidious could project fragments of his will during moments of extreme emotion or pain. 3 clone troopers assigned to the prison level disappeared. They were found days later in the Coruscant underworld, their minds broken, mumbling about the Master's will and the coming darkness. The inhibitor chips that would have triggered Order 66 had been removed, but something else had taken root. A kind of mental programming achieved through prolonged exposure to Sidious's malevolent presence, combined with subliminal suggestions from his followers on the outside. He's turning them without words, without direct contact. Just proximity to his presence is enough. Learned something new he has, or perhaps always knew but never needed. Desperate makes one creative. Throughout the galaxy, those who had served Palpatine began to move. Corporate executives who had profited from the war, military officers who missed the clarity of conflict, politicians who preferred order to freedom. They formed cells, communicated in code, and waited. Some genuinely believed the Jedi had staged a coup. Others simply saw opportunity in chaos. In the Senate, calls for Sidious's release grew louder. A bomb exploded in the Jedi Temple's public archives, killing 12 younglings on a field trip. The bomber's manifesto claimed the Jedi were indoctrinating children, stealing them from families. It didn't matter that the Reformed Order had ended that practice. Perception was everything. They're using our own reforms against us. Every change we've made to be more open, they twist into weakness. The medical droids can't find anything wrong, but I can feel it. The dark side is killing you, just like in my visions. Through the Force, Anakin sensed Sidious's presence like a shadow over his family. The Sith Lord was patient, methodical, using his imprisonment to become a martyr while his followers destabilized everything the Republic had built. And always, those yellow eyes seemed to be watching, waiting for Anakin to break. Padme's condition worsened each day. The finest medical minds in the Republic could find nothing wrong. Her body was healthy, but her life force itself seemed to be draining away. Luke and Leia stood vigil with their father, their young faces marked with an understanding beyond their years. I can feel it, Father. Something dark, reaching for Mother through the Force. It's him, isn't it? Sidious. He's doing this somehow. Anakin hadn't slept in days. He meditated constantly, searching for a solution, diving deep into the Force for answers. In his desperation, he even reached out to the dark side, not to embrace it, but to understand it, to find some way to break Sidious's hold. It was there, in that dangerous space between light and dark, that he heard the voice. The ghostly form of Qui-Gon Jinn shimmered into existence, more solid than any Force ghost Anakin had ever seen. The maverick Jedi who had found him on Tatooine, who had believed in him when no one else would, stood before him now with infinite compassion in his translucent eyes. Master Qui-Gon, help me, please. There must be something, some knowledge, some power. The power you seek doesn't exist, Anakin, not in the way you imagine. Sidious feeds on fear, on the desperate need to control fate. Every moment you spend searching for a way to save Padme through power, you feed him. Then what do I do? Let her die? Watch my children lose their mother? Trust, Anakin. Trust in the Force, in your family, in the light. Sidious wants you to break, to come to him for answers. But the answer isn't in controlling life and death. It's in accepting that some things are beyond our control, and choosing love anyways. As if in response to these words, alarms began blaring throughout the temple. The impossible had happened. Sidious was free. The prison transport was supposed to be impregnable, surrounded by Jedi starfighters, crewed by the most loyal clone troopers, equipped with every conceivable security measure. But Sidious's followers had spent 5 years planning this moment. It started with a staged protest at the Senate building, drawing security forces away. Then came synchronized bombings across Coruscant's government district, overwhelming emergency responders. In the chaos, 3 heavily modified freighters dropped out of hyperspace directly above the transport route, a precision jump that should have been impossible. Multiple hostile vessels! They're using Confederate droid fighters! How is that possible? The answer became clear as the battle unfolded. Former separatist holdouts, Imperial loyalists who had never accepted the Republic's authority, and corrupted clone troopers had united under Sidious's influence. The attack was surgical, targeting the transport's specific vulnerabilities. Inside the transport, Sidious sat perfectly still as explosions rocked the vessel. The void stone cuffs still bound him, but his followers had planned for that too. A suicide bomber among the guards detonated himself, shattering the restraints in a blast that killed a dozen defenders. Free at last, Sidious rose like a specter of death. Lightning erupted from his fingers, not blue, but deep crimson, tainted by 5 years of compressed hatred. Jedi defenders fell screaming, their lightsabers useless against the overwhelming darkness. Did you think stone and steel could hold the dark side itself? I am eternal! Plo Koon led the fighter response, but Sidious's mere presence disrupted their coordination. In the confusion, vulture droids swarmed his fighter. His last transmission was calm, accepting his fate like the Jedi he was. Tell the Council, he's stronger than before. The imprisonment, it focused him. The explosion that claimed Plo Koon lit up Coruscant's night sky. By the time reinforcements arrived, Sidious was gone, vanished into the underworld with his followers. The Republic's greatest nightmare had returned. The Senate chamber lay in ruins, its pods scattered like broken teeth, the very air crackling with dark energy. Sidious had chosen this place deliberately. He stood at the center podium, his yellow eyes blazing with malevolent triumph. Come then, Jedi! Face the true power of the dark side! They came as three, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda, the greatest champions of the light. The battle that followed would be remembered as the most devastating force confrontation in galactic history. Lightning met lightsaber, pods flew like massive projectiles, and the very foundations of the building shook. Sidious was indeed stronger, his imprisonment having acted like a pressure chamber, compressing his hatred into something beyond mere darkside mastery. He moved like smoke and struck like thunder, his lightsaber a crimson blur that seemed to be everywhere at once. Prepared for this we are not. Changed, he has. Evolved. Obi-Wan fell first, Sidious's lightning overwhelming his defenses, sending him crashing into the Chancellor's podium with bone-crushing force. He lived, but barely, unable to rise as the battle raged above him. Master! Your concern makes you weak, Skywalker. This is why the Sith are supreme. We have no such limitations. But Sidious had miscalculated. Yoda, seeing Anakin's rage building, did something unexpected. Instead of attacking Sidious, he stepped between them, taking the full force of the Sith Lord's next lightning barrage. The ancient Jedi Master absorbed the darkness into himself, his small form glowing with contained energy. The effort nearly killed him, his life force flickering like a candle in the wind. Not in anger, young Skywalker, in peace. Show him what the Chosen One truly means. With those words, Yoda released the energy, not as an attack, but as pure force light, temporarily severing Sidious's connection to the dark side. The effort left Yoda collapsed, barely breathing, but alive. In that moment of vulnerability, Anakin struck, not with rage, not with fear, but with the clarity of purpose that had always been his destiny. Their blades met in a final exchange, Sidious's strength against Anakin's determination. But Sidious, without the dark side's enhancement, was just an old man. Anakin's blade found its mark, ending the Sith Lord's threat forever. But victory came at a price. Sidious's final act was one of pure spite, a burst of corrupted force energy that struck Anakin directly in the chest, attacking not just his body, but his very connection to life itself. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems. Anakin lay still, his breathing shallow, surrounded by those he loved most. The wound Sidious had inflicted couldn't be healed, it existed in the Force itself, a severing that no medical science could repair. The darkness, it's gone. I can breathe again. You saved me. Seems I was always meant to bring balance, just not the way anyone expected. Yoda had survived, though diminished, his life force permanently weakened by channeling Sidious's darkness. He sat quietly in the corner, his ancient eyes full of sorrow and pride. Obi-Wan, treated immediately after the battle with Bacta therapy and force healing, had recovered enough to stand vigil at his former Padawan's side. Luke and Leia held their father's hands, their force presence bright with love and grief. Remember, the Force isn't about power, it's about connection. To each other, to all living things. Don't let anyone tell you different. We'll remember, Father, we promise. We'll make sure the galaxy remembers too, who you really were. As the sun set over Coruscant, a sight Anakin had always said reminded him of Tatooine, the Chosen One became one with the Force, not in violence, not in darkness, but surrounded by love, having saved those he cared about most. The funeral that followed was unlike anything the Republic had ever seen. Millions lined the streets as Anakin Skywalker was laid to rest, not as a failed Jedi or a potential Sith, but as a hero who had twice saved the galaxy from darkness. The Jedi Order reformed around the principles he had embodied. That attachment guided by wisdom was not weakness, that love and duty could coexist. Luke and Leia grew up knowing their father's story, the truth of it, and carried his legacy forward. They became the first of a new generation of Jedi, trained in both the traditional ways and the reforms their father had died defending. The galaxy remembered Anakin Skywalker not as Darth Vader, the monster he might have been, but as the man who chose trust over fear, love over power, and sacrifice over survival. 10 years later, a statue stood in the Jedi Temple's main hall. Anakin Skywalker, lightsaber raised not in attack, but in defense, his other arm extended in protection. The inscription read simply, "The Chosen One, who brought balance through love." The dark side would return, as it always did, in new forms and faces, but so would the light, stronger for having been tested, wiser for having learned that true strength came not from detachment, but from connection. Anakin's sacrifice ensured that when darkness rose again, the Jedi would face it not as isolated warriors, but as a family bound by more than just the Force. In the end, the prophecy was fulfilled exactly as foretold. Anakin Skywalker destroyed the Sith and brought balance to the Force. He just did it as a father, a husband, and a Jedi who understood that love wasn't the enemy of peace. It was its greatest guardian. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of what might have been, remember to hit that subscribe button and join us for more explorations of the infinite possibilities within that galaxy far, far away. May the Force be with you, always.